We have some additional news here that we wanted to get to about the way that Trump is paying for his legal bills. Put this up on the screen from Bloomberg. This is pretty wild. I think this was reported first by the New York Times. Trump's PAC has spent more than $40 million on his legal defense, his legal costs, and also they're also paying for the legal costs of his employees who are under fire as well, which you can understand because, you know, they don't want them to flip. And so by sort of keeping them close and paying their bills, they lessen the chance that those employees that have been charged are going to flip. And that's not all. You also have an indication that, you know, these legal bills, even for a wealthy guy who's able to raise a whole lot of money, that it is really putting a squeeze on him. The PAC had to request a refund on a $60 million contribution that it made to another group that was supporting Trump, signaling, they say, a potential money crisis for the campaign, originally reported by the New York Times. And the $40 million is not even the whole of what Trump has apparently spent on his legal defense and those of his aides. That's in addition to a $16 million that Save America spent in the previous 2 years on legal fees. So all these Trump supporters that are giving to his PAC, all these donations that are coming in, a lot of it is not going to, you know, campaigning against Ron DeSantis or campaigning against Joe Biden. It's going directly to paying Trump's legal bills.
Yeah, and us covering this will not diminish their fundraising whatsoever, because to them, I mean, it's clear Trump is the, you know, everything that he's using the money for is the reason why they love him.
Right.
Defense, the Biden administration is going after him. It's never his fault. It's always the establishment. It's always somebody else who's, in some cases, listen, that is true. That's part of the problem. Sometimes it actually partially is true. And then some cases, like the documents case, it's directly his fault. But $40 million in legal fees. Listen, folks, if you donated to the Trump Save America PAC, like that's where your actual money is going. And they're strapped enough that they have to issue the refund. And I personally just like, that has bothered me from day one. I remember covering first on Rising, then here, the January 6th case. How many times he said, I'm going to contest the election results and all this stuff for the people who believed in it. And guess what? Not a single dollar of that actually went to any contesting of the legal results of the election. Instead, he put it in the bank, apparently so that he can dedicate it to his legal defense fund, you know, instead of doing what he said. And once again, it's just like the NFT thing. For some reason, these people have a relationship to him where they are constantly willing to just frankly be bilked and to just turn their money over. And look, it's a free country. You can do what you want. I mean, I just personally think it's really wrong whenever you're an elected official and you're using it to these purposes. But like I said, in many ways, the reason they're giving so much this money is exactly why this is all happening in the first place. They feel he's under threat. They feel he's being persecuted. They see him as a representative of them. It's just going to continue to go on this way. Nothing will change.
It may be true that some decent or very high percentage of those who gave money to the Save America PAC are cool with it being used for his legal bills. That may be the case. It's also the case that it's definitely not what was represented in terms of when they were making these donations. I did see this morning that he is going to start a separate legal defense fund. I mean, it is also just a mind-boggling amount of money. $65 million just on legal bills is really hard to wrap your head around. At the same time, Trump was out on the campaign trail. He was given a speech, and he is calling on his opponents to drop out of the race and put their money towards what he describes as a ballot harvesting operation. Let's take a listen to that.
I think it's time for Ron DeSanctimonious and so many of those other clowns on the stage. No, you had to see Iowa. They're speaking to people that aren't even listening. They're talking. For Ron DeSanctimonious and so many others that are wasting hundreds of millions of dollars that Republicans should be using to build a massive vote-gathering operation to take on crooked Joe Biden in November.
It's a bit of a turnabout there, Saagar, on the whole mail-in ballot and quote-unquote ballot harvesting operation, which is the language that Republicans like to use to paint all Democratic efforts to, you know, encourage people to vote mail-in as like really nefarious, where, you know, and now Trump's just like, yeah, drop out and give all your money to our own ballot harvesting
operation. If that's what it takes to take mail-in balloting, I'll just take it, because it's so, like, all the rhetoric around it is so stupid. It's so annoying. But increasingly, I see Glenn Youngkin and other Republican politicians who are fully embracing mail-in voting. You had that famous, the big clip of Hannity Hannity pressing Trump repeatedly 4 separate times to embrace mail-in balloting, aka ballot harvesting. Trump didn't want to do it, but eventually, you know, he seems to be convinced now that this might be the only thing that he's doing. I actually think this is a smart play in terms of whenever he's up on DeSantis and the rest of his rivals this much, he's like, you are wasting money. You are wasting my time as the anointed one, as the representative of our base and all that. You need to drop out and ensure a Republican victory in 2024. Now, the only way that that wouldn't work is if Republicans thought that the other candidates were more electable. But we now have reams of data, both polling and otherwise, to point to say, actual Republican GOP primary voters, they think Trump is the most electable.
Yeah.
So to them, of course, that's going to resonate. They're like, why are you wasting all of our time? You should be defending President Trump. That is, you have to put yourself in the mind of some of these voters whenever you're looking at this.
By the way, I don't know that they're wrong about Trump being more electable than DeSantis.
Also kind of agree with you.
Well, I mean, the obvious wild card, as I was mentioning before, he might be in prison, so there is that. But I was just looking at the polls this weekend in terms of Real Clear Politics average, in terms of the hypothetical head-to-head between Biden and Trump or Biden and DeSantis. And Trump is closer to Biden in that hypothetical head-to-head than DeSantis is at this point. That was not the case previously. There's also reporting that even within the White House, they've changed their opinion about who they would rather go up against. They now think Ron DeSantis is actually the weaker candidate, and the Republican base, by the way, agrees with you. There's a big New York Times poll out this morning, we may cover it tomorrow, that you know, they do they spend a lot of money on these things, and they've got President Trump, former President Trump, at 54%, DeSantis at 17%, and everyone else at 3 or 2%. So obviously, with Trump pulling in a majority of the vote there, even if you have the, you know, donor dream of everyone else dropping out and everyone coalescing around one particular candidate, whether it's Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, or someone else, still they are losing significantly to Donald Trump. So, you know, it is certainly not breaking towards any of the contenders. Former President Trump had some interesting commentary about some of the phone calls he'd been receiving from former Ron DeSantis donors at that same campaign rally. Let's take a listen to that.
Last week, I started getting phone calls 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. Hi, President. I just called to say hello. What are the big donors? Oh, I thought you were with DeSantis. No, weren't you with DeSantis? Sometimes referred to as DeSanctimonious. Never referred to as DeSantis. Never.
So talking there about the fact that some of the donors, which were really, you know, the backbone of the Ron DeSantis campaign, are starting to call it, who knows if it's true or not, it's Donald Trump, but certainly he's picking up on a vibe and some of the reporting that is out there. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.